My name is Markeda, and I come today to share a story how God continued to show himself truly in my life as a miracle worker. I was born with a twin sister, so I've always longed for someone with me. I always had a desire to have a child of my own. I had my first daughter. I was 19 when she came into my life, and then after her, 2 years later, I had my son. Then I just had another one. So then I'm 3 kids in, and I'm like, okay, well, here's the all-American dream family. And then I had my daughter. Even in having those 3 kids, I still felt I was missing something. When I had my daughter, I was not saved. I was not a Christian. I continued to live a life of partying, drinking. So when my daughter was in the hospital 24 weeks, she was told to me that she would not live probably past 2 weeks because she was very premature and required many type of medical intervention. She was on the oscillator. She was on a ventilator, G-tube. She ended up getting neck, which they had to take 13 centimeters of her bowels out. And we were then transported to a local hospital. And even in the transportation, I was told that she may not make it to the hospital, which was about 20 minutes out. I never really experienced loss at this time. So when I went back to my hospital room, nobody was there. I was looking out of the window of the hospital. I said, God, I will give you my life for her life. Not knowing it completely what I was saying, but it was my last hope because everything else, all the odds were stacked so high against her, and I went to God. And when I gave my life to Christ by myself in the hospital room, I started to read my Bible, and as I began to go visit her, she started getting better. Tubes start coming off of her, and as a NICU parent, you know the less wires they have on them, the better. So things start turning around well. She started gaining weight, and about 3 weeks out, and I went back. I started to go back to partying and hanging out, and when I went back, I knew what I said to God, but I didn't know the depths of it. And 3 weeks came out. I went to visit her, a normal day. And when I went to go visit her, I held her. Her father held her. We were doing great. Hey, we'll see you later. Not even 15 minutes from leaving the hospital, I get a phone call. You need to come back up here. So I didn't think of the phone call because I just left her. She was fine. She's doing great. And when we get there, I see a whole bunch of doctors around her, and she's bleeding. And when she started to bleed, I asked her what was going on. They said, well, she has neck. And he said, it's bad, so we're going to have to send her out. So they sent her out, and as they sent her out, I'm sitting there, and I feel hopeless again. I lied to God, and I didn't mean any of that. I just did what I know to get me out of the situation that I was in. I sat there, and I was like, God, you got my attention now. I messed up, but here I am again. You're merciful. So we get to the hospital, and when we get to the hospital, they said we have to do an exploratory surgery. We're going to have to open her up from the chest all the way to her belly button. Her intestines are swollen, and it's compressing against her lung, which is causing her to destat. But we're not sure if she'll make it through the night. So I called my aunt, and we prayed. And I sat at the bedside, and guilt is what was the emotion for the day. Guilt was the name for the day because I felt hopeless as a mom, and being a mom was so much to me and meant so much to me. And I felt at that time that I failed. I felt her. I failed probably one of my only desires in life, because all I had to do was just change who I was and give up the things of the world. So I repented. I asked God to forgive me at the hospital bed. I went back to reading, and they told me to go home. So when I went home, I came back in the morning. She was stable. And I said, okay, God, you're hearing me. So I began to pray and begin to worship and read my Bible, pray, worship. I sat by the bedside, and I started to cut things immediately. I said, you know what? Nope. I started to cut things off my life. I started to cut people out that didn't want to walk this walk with Christ with me. I started to detach myself off of things that kept me in bondage and kept me into going back to those clubs, those places. When I began to go deeper into Christ, into truly seek the kingdom of God, things started to get better. Her medical turned around significantly. We were in the hospital for 6 months, but it didn't feel like 6 months. It felt shorter than 6 months. She started to progress really well. Was it a smooth sail? No, we had ups and downs, we had bumps, But I knew that if I keep my promise with God, he was going to keep his promise with me. And then she goes home and life is great and things is looking up for us. And then I end up not being with her dad anymore, separating for a while. And then I end up getting married. And when I got married, now it's the all-American dream. So when everything started to go well and things started to happen, I end up getting pregnant with my fourth child. And for 7 months, I continued to seek God. She was 7 months old. I had my daughter. I continued to seek God. And as I began to do that, a normal Friday, my whole entire life changed. It was a normal day. We come home 5 o'clock. We all get ready. I'm scrambling everybody. Let's go. And we're chaotic. We're dysfunctional, but we're functional. We're waiting for my ex-husband to come home. We go to church. So now my children said they were hungry. By now, we were tired of eating McDonald's. So I told the kids, I said, we are not going to McDonald's. Matter of fact, mom is cooking some jerk chicken. So we're going to go over to mom's house. So we get there. It's a whole bunch of people. And I bring the 3 kids out the car and I carry my youngest one. And she was now 7 months old. And I carry her. And when I carry her to my mom's house, it's time for us to go. We get the food. I noticed that my 12-year-old at the time, she was struggling to carry the food. It was a lot of food for her. So I said, hey, hold your sister. You guys go to the car. I'll grab the food. So as she's walking out, we're telling everyone bye. Have a good night. I see both my children. And as soon as I see them, it was as fast as I didn't see them. I immediately run over to the gate and they fell. So my 12-year-old tripped over a sandbag with my 7-month-old hitting a concrete pavement. So the first thing I do, I run over there and my 12-year-old is rolling off of her sister, the 7-month-old. So I grabbed the baby, I picked the baby up and she started crying. Immediately I'm like, okay, she's crying. That's a good thing. It's a good sign. So I pick her up and as I pick her up, it was a little dark so I couldn't physically see her face. So I run her over to a light. So when I run her to a light, she began to see. So as she sees it and starting to convulse, I hold her and I yell out, she's having a seizure, call 911. So as they begin to call 911, I'm holding her and she immediately went unresponsive. And when she went unresponsive, I started to say to God, this is not it. And I'm holding her and I'm like, God, this is not it. I've been walking faith. This is not it for her. I said, gosh, she's so small. She's only 7 months old. This cannot be it. If anything happens to her, I'm going to lose my 12-year-old too. So I get up with her and I hear the ambulance, but they so close, but seem so far away. And she's like, they're getting off of the highway. And the highway from my mom's house is like maybe a 2-minute drive. And it felt like forever for them to get there. So I pick her up and I walk her to the end of the driveway. So when they get there, the supervisor, she comes out and she said, oh my God, this baby needs oxygen. So they put her on the oxygen. We go in the ambulance and I sat in the front and I would look back as they're taking care of her in the back. And I'm like, God, no, this is not it. I begin to pray. We get to the hospital. So when I get there, they immediately pull her into the trauma room. And the priest, the chaplain in the hospital, he said, can I take you into another room? And I said, no. I said, I need to be with her. And he asked me if I was saved. I said, yes. I said, I'm an evangelist in the church. I need to be by her side because I need to be praying. He said, well, you know exactly what you need to do. So he went with me into the operating room with her. And when I went in there, it was so much going on because now she was tiring out. It was a matter of time before they would have had to do some type of intervention, which they did. They began to intubate her. And when they began to intubate her, I hear the trauma doctor saying that we're losing ground. So I said, God, they're losing ground. They're losing ground, God. You got to step in. So when they were able to intubate her and they were able to stabilize her, and they said, we're going to go do a MRI and CAT scan. And when they went to do the MRI and CAT scan, they said, do you know that she has different brain bleeds? I said, no. She said, well, we have to lifestar her to another hospital that can deal with her care. So I said, okay, we're gonna lifestar. He said, do you know that, you know what, we'll just wait until she gets to the hospital. You can talk to the doctors because they'll do a second look. I said, okay. I wait for the lifestar to get there. They get there and they get her ready to fly her. So They're getting ready to fly. My sister's outside. My family's outside with me for a ride. And when I get out there, I'm like, just take me to the hospital. I get to the hospital. As I get to the hospital, I had a sense of peace. So I wasn't hysterical. I wasn't crying. I just had a sense of peace that this wasn't it. But even with that sense of peace, I'm human. This is my baby. And the Bible says the peace that surpasses all understanding. So now I'm like, okay, well, that's why I don't understand, because it's not for me to understand. So I get there, and as I get there, I have all her stuff. I have her car seat and her book bag, because I had faith, and I knew in my heart, despite everything and what everything looked like, she was going to come home with me. By the time we get to the hospital, she's now in a coma. So she slips in a coma, and they keep her in a coma because it helps with the healing. So when I get there, they stabilize her, and the neurologist comes in. I was treated like I abused her, and they had something called a DART team. So the DART team called the Department of Children and Family Services, and my other children were basically placed on a hold. So I couldn't get them. They said that, where your children are? I said, they're with my mom. So they said, okay, well, don't move them from your mom and your sister's house. And we were told from the doctors here that she's going to be here for a little bit. So we don't have to put any legal orders on her to not be removed. I said, okay. I never abused her. I know I didn't abuse her. There was witnesses there. She fell. So now they're doing a workup. They're investigating. The DCF is now involved, my other children. But now I have my daughter, the 12-year-old, calling me, and she's like, Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do it. Everybody think it's my fault. And I'm like, baby, no, it's okay. So as a mom, once again, I felt hopeless, because I have one physically going through it and I can't help. And then I have one who's now mentally going through it. And I'm trying to be mom in two places and still trying to keep myself grounded and keep myself mentally stable. So once again, I go back to what I know, which is God. Now I'm in a hospital in the middle of a pandemic with no one, because there was no visitors. It was COVID. And I'm the crazy lady, because 2/3 of my daughter's brain was damaged. And I was told that within the next 72 hours, the rest of her brain will be damaged. And the best case scenario for me and culture was she was going to be in a vegetative state. So when I heard vegetative state, I said, well, what does that mean? He said, oh, well, she may open her eyes in the morning and she may close her eyes at night, but she will never know who you are. She will never know who her dad is. I said, the devil is a liar. And I went on to a fast, and I began to fast, and I began to pray. I didn't eat anything for 3 days. I would hear the nurses transfer responsibilities to another nurse, and they say, listen, look out for mom. Mom hasn't eaten since she's gotten here. And I will cry, and I would dance, and I will praise God, and I will worship him. So now she began to have seizures, and they have her eating cheese, and all these things is going on with her. She's not waking up. And I prayed, and when I prayed, I went to sleep. And when I woke up, the Lord spoke to me and said, go to the house. So I knew the house was the church. I have not left the hospital since I've gotten there. I haven't showered. I did nothing for 3 days. So I called my pastor, and I said, I need to come to the house. So I go to the church after everybody was gone, and my pastor left a soaking CD, which is just songs of worship. So I played a CD, and I began to pace around the room, and I'm like, God, I don't know what I'm doing, but I need you, God. This is day 3. She hasn't woken up. I need to hear from you, God. I haven't heard from you. I need something. So immediately the Holy Spirit began to tell me strategically who to call. So I called my aunt, who was my spiritual leader at the time, and she started to pray, and she started to get the rest of the her members on the phone. We began to pray. I began to go up in the spirit and I spoke in my heavenly language, and I began to immediately start to commune with God. And in that moment, I wasn't even here. I was like tearing things down. I was warring for my daughter, spiritual warfare for her. And I'm like, no, this is not the end of it. So the crying went from me being a soldier and literally going and fighting for my daughter's life. And the vision is Jesus standing behind culture in the hospital. So in the vision, I see all the doctors. I see the medications, and I see them trying to work on her, but it's Jesus standing behind her. So in the vision, I see him standing over her. Her head is here. He's over her. And he said, tell them that I have arrived. So I said, that for me was enough. I just needed to hear something. That was enough. I didn't care how God was going to do it. He said he have arrived. So I go there. I get my stuff on from the church, and I go home. I take a shower. I check in with all the other kids. A situation was happening, and immediately I said, that's a distraction. I had my daughter run me back up to the hospital, and when we get to the hospital, I wanted to tell them in the hospital, he's arrived, he's arrived, he's arrived. But to them, it's just a daily operation. So I go to the room, and as I go to the room, everything gets worse. And now the seizures are coming. They're coming more frequently. They have someone literally sitting in the room with us, monitoring her seizures. You have arrived, God. Like, what does that mean? I know you're here, but God, it's getting worse. So nevertheless, I trust you. So they stabilize her again. We go out in the hallway for rounds. They tell me that she's having seizures. The neurologist says to me, well, Mom, we need to start to discuss palliative care, end of life care for her. And I said, no. I said, he's arrived. And immediately in front of all of them, I said, God, show them who you are. So then I leave out. I go to Bible study. I get a call, and it's from my aunt, who said the Lord told her to tell me that the baby will arise in 3 days. So when I went to Bible study, I get a phone call, a video call from her dad. He's calling her name, and she's waking up in the video. So I jumped on a couch. I was like, oh my God, she woke up. She's waking up. So we all start cheering, and everybody's crying and everything. So when we get to the hospital, she woke up in the video, but when I get back, she's back sleeping. So they do rounds again, and as they begin to do the round, we all are in the hallway. So I got a smile on my face, and I'm like, God did it. I said, well, she's starting to wake up. I got a video of her waking up. And they didn't believe me. So neurologist said, well, you know what, ma'am? Those might be neurological tics that she's having, or those could be what we call baby seizures. So then a resident doctor said they'll call down to the Tombs. So the Tombs is where they have someone watching the EEG activity. So when he calls down, he's on the phone with the guys from the Tombs. And as he's on the phone with them, the neurologist is trying to explain to me, well, those are tics, and, you know, the muscles can open, they can jump, and it can appear that she's waking up, but she may not be waking up. Those can be seizures. We're sure that they're seizures because she's been having seizures. So I'm like to myself, the devil's a liar. The devil's a liar. The devil's a liar. God, you said. So as he's telling me about the neurological tic, the resident interrupts him and said, I just got off the phone with the Tomb, and she hasn't had a seizure since Sunday. So I said, so he looks at the doctor, the resident. He said, well, what is it? I said, she's waking up. And things started to come off her. I knew that enough from having a premature child. They started to take her off of morphine, which was what they were keeping her, to keep her comfortable and keep her sedated. And as they took off the morphine, the neurologist said to me, well, you keep saying she's waking up. She has a foreign object in her going down her throat, and she's not trying to take it out of her mouth. A normal child would take it out their mouth. She's not trying to take it out. And I said, well, let's see what God does. So they begin to remove her off of the things that were keeping her in a coma. Her brain activity began to increase, and she woke up. When she woke up, for me, I was grateful. The night before she actually woke up, I had a dream. And when I had the dream, it was Jesus. His back was turned, and he was knelt down doing something. Seemed busy to me. And I walked up to him, and I said, Jesus, son of David. And he looked back, and he said, she's healed. And I said, okay, well, where is she? He said, on 7 East Top eating ice cream. And I said, 7 East eating ice cream. So I woke up, and I text my pastor, and I said 7 East Top. I said, I don't know what that means, but this is where he said I will find her eating ice cream. Everybody, of course, started going to Google. We started to Google East, 7 East. And she wakes up. So she wakes up, and as she wakes up, they start to extubate her. They take her off the ventilator. She begins to breathe on her own. And I still haven't held her. I haven't held her in days. So when I go on that Sunday to just go be with her, because I went to church, the nurse said, you want to hold her? And I said, sure, of First, I held her. I want to hold her. As soon as I sat down and I held her, I looked at her and I said, Culture, you're a miracle. The nurse knocks on the door and she said, today's your lucky day. And I said, is it just today? That's a lucky day for me. She said, we're moving you out. And I said, yeah? She said, yeah, she's not considered ICU anymore. We're moving you guys to a regular floor. So I said, okay. Wait a minute. What floor? She said, 7 East. Okay. Is there a rooftop up there? There used to be. We enclosed it now to a teens area, but there used to be. And I said, so I called everybody. I said, we're moving. So everybody was excited about us moving, but they didn't get at first where. I said, no, we're going to 7 East. And they was like, well, Jesus said she would be. Yes. So we get to 7 East, and as we get to see 7 East, I said, can I feed her? You know, she got to be hungry because she's not on any type of fluid besides the IV. So she said, yeah, but because she's been intubated for the time she was intubated, we can't just give her regular liquids. We just can't give her formula. So I said, oh, well, I usually put cereal in it to make it thicker. She said, well, that's a consistency, but we need to try her on different types of consistency. So I said, okay, that's fine. So we tried her regular formula, which was considered thick. And then after we tried her on the thick, I said, okay, well, we can just try her on regular fluids, right? And then her speech therapist said, no, before we do thin liquid, let's do thicken. So they did thicken, they did nectar, and then they did ice cream. I cried out. I said, Jesus, 7 East, stop eating ice cream. And even though he seemed in my dreams so busy, he was so busy to me doing something. I felt like I interrupted God. I felt like I interrupted Jesus. And I felt that he was so busy in what he was doing. And even in the midst of me feeling that Jesus was busy, he took the time out to tell me where my daughter was. And I knew we had a journey. I knew we had a journey of recovery. And having a journey means there's a destination, there's a place, and you're moving. I was grateful for the journey. God never left me. He never forsaken me. He never turned his back on me. Every day that I wake up, I see what he has done and what he could do. And I'm grateful.